Good evening, I'm Thomas Weeast here with your 6 o'clock news. This month will mark the 1-year anniversary of the inauguration of the first African-American president, Barack Obama. Our station has compiled some of the on-location footage back from some of the civil rights events during the 1950s, showing how far our nation has come. First, our footage from the Brown versus Board of Education case of 1954.
Good morning, folks. This is Samantha Bourbon, Shawnee TV News. The recently released outcome of the well-known Brown versus Board of Education case has given the supporters of integration reason to celebrate. Originally initiated and prepared by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, participants of the program sought out local African American parents who were willing to act against the segregation rules put in place by the school board. The case was eventually turned over to the Supreme Court, who last night released the results that separate is no longer equal. The challenge to the former ruling was brought to the attention of the Supreme Court as a collaboration of 5 cases, all from different areas of the United States, but all in support of the same cause, a desire for equal rights. After careful consideration and reasoning, the Supreme Court declared racial segregation not only a violator of the 14th Amendment, which declares every citizen equal protection of laws, but also as an excuse for prejudice, stereotypical assumption, and discrimination. Such behavior has officially been declared unconstitutional and un-American and will no longer be tolerated, especially in schools. Brown versus Board of Education yielded results that conflict with the 1896 rulings of Plessy versus Ferguson, a case dealing with similar issues that supposedly upheld the constitutionality of segregation and resulted with the court ruling separate but equal. The Brown versus Board of Education breakthrough ruling is predicted to be a major conquest for supporters of the American civil rights movement and is likely to pave the way towards permanent integration. As declared by Chief Justice Earl Warren, in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate but educational facilities are inherently unequal. I'm Samantha Bourbon from Shawnee TV, your #1 news station for civil rights reports.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, I'm Thomas Weeast, continuing with our recognition of the progress America has had since the time of the civil rights movements. We would like to contribute the footage from Shawnee TV broadcast from the Montgomery bus boycott.
I'm Delilah Raybank, reporting live from Montgomery, Alabama, where the news has just hit that the bus boycott that began on December 5th, 1955, as a result of Miss Rosa Parks' arrest here in Montgomery, has officially ended. After 381 days and $750,000 of bus company money lost, the U.S. Supreme Court decided last month, on November 13, 1956, that segregation on public buses, like the one Miss Parks was riding, is unconstitutional. If you've been keeping up with your nightly news, then you already know that the former president of the NAACP and beginning leader of the boycott, Edgar Daniel Nixon, had passed much of the boycott leadership over to the young minister, Martin Luther King Jr., because of Nixon's business travel. Yesterday, Martin Luther King called for the conclusion of the boycott to the agreement of the community. Today, he rode a newly integrated public bus with fellow activists Ralph Abernathy, E.D. Nixon, and Glenn Smiley. He proudly stated, "We came to see that, in the long run, it is more honorable to walk in dignity than ride in humiliation. So, we decided to substitute tired feet for tired souls and walk the streets of Montgomery." Well, the combination of walking, nonviolent protest, and Christian morals of the Montgomery Improvement Association, the boycott advancement organization that formed over the past 13 months, has certainly paid off, and we can bet this won't be the last we see of Martin Luther King Jr. I'm Delilah Raybank, reporting live from Montgomery, Alabama, and now back to the station.
And next, we will remember the Little Rock Nine: Gloria Ray, Terrence Roberts, Melba Polito, Elizabeth Eckford, Ernest Green, Minnie Jean Brown, Jefferson Thomas, Carlotta Walls, and Thelma Mothershed. They were the first African-American students who were challenging segregation in public schools. Here is some of the historic footage from the first day of the Little Rock Nine were allowed to enter Little Rock Central High School.
The Little Rock Nine were finally allowed to attend classes here at Little Rock Central High School. First, on September 2nd, Governor Phobos ordered the National Guard to physically stop the 9 colored students from entering the school. Then again on September 24th, when Phobos finally withdrew the guard, the students were still banned from attending by a mob of students, parents, and other members of the local community. But finally today, the courageous pupils with the National Guard on their side were allowed to enter the facility.
Samantha, today I was able to catch up with some locals who gave their opinions on the happenings here today. One woman said, "I believe that anyone who wants to go to school should be allowed to, but I don't know about mixing the schools. It seems a little unnatural." A man I caught up with said, "Well, fair is fair, and this high school here has better classes and other activities. Plus, those students deserve to be here because they were the best in their class."
Absolutely. I'm Samantha Bourbon, reporting live from Little Rock.
And I'm Delilah Raybank. Thank you, and have a great night.
Well, that was simply an inspiring act of courage from such young people. And now, our final re-airing is from February 1st, 1960, when a group of 4 students attending North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College walked into an F.W. Woolworth store. They purchased some items and then decided to sit in at the lunch counter and ask to be served. But they did not sit down just to get some lunch. They were making a larger statement. Let's revisit the story from May of 1960 that grew to be one of the most well-known of the civil rights movements.
Delilah Raybank here with Shawnee TV, your #1 source for nightly news. Now, if you've lost touch with your news lately, we've been covering the Woolworth lunch sit-ins in North Carolina. On the 1st of February this year, 4 students, Joseph McNeil, Franklin McCain, David Richmond, and Ezell Blair Jr. had just purchased school supplies in an F.W. Woolworth store. They then went to the lunch counter in the same store and asked to order food. As they imagined would happen, they were not served. They sat there until the store closed and were kicked out without having their order taken. One of them was quoted as saying, "We believe since we buy books and paper in the other part of the store, we should get served in this part." Initially, the manager of the store, C.L. Harris, said that the students didn't bother him as they were nothing to him. His view quickly changed, however, as the next day the number of students grew to 15, then 300 on the 3rd day, then eventually bulged to 1,000 students. Throughout the next few weeks, students in 11 different cities were sitting in at lunch counters asking to be served. On February 27th, a group of students were attacked by a group of white teens. The police were called, but when they arrived at the scene, it was not the attackers that were arrested. The violent white teenagers were set free, and the students sitting in at the lunch counters were arrested because of disorderly conduct. However, as soon as they were arrested, another group of students quickly took their place, sitting at the same lunch counter, not leaving until they were served. In their trial, the protesters who were arrested were defended by African-American lawyer Z. Alexander Luby. Luby could not even get the judge to listen to him, who literally turned his back to Luby. Then, just last month, Luby's Nashville home was reduced to ruins by a large explosion, set off by a person who did not support Luby's defense of the African-American students. Sit-ins around the South continued, without much progress, until just yesterday when 6 lunch counters in Nashville, Luby's hometown, began serving lunch to whites and African-Americans. And although sit-ins continue to this day with no real end in sight, progress is being made. Prominent black author James Baldwin feels that progress is not quite fast enough, claiming that all of Africa will be free before we can get a lousy cup of coffee.
Thanks for visiting some of the most inspiring stories of the 1950s and 60s with us. For all of us here at Shawnee TV, I'm Tommy Weeast, the Beast, saying have a good night.